Earth had lost 214 war games in a row. Vera Stroud noticed because losing was her subject. She was 63, a former world chess champion, and for the past decade the curator of the Museum of Games in Amsterdam, where humanity kept 4,000 years of play. Senate boards from Egyptian tombs. Ghost stones worn translucent by Tang dynasty fingers. The chessboard from Reykjavik, 1972. Her exhibits told one long story, that nothing reveals a mind or a civilization like the way it plays. Which was why the Concorde fascinated her. Contact had come 6 years earlier, peaceful and almost anticlimactic. The Concorde was a polity of 40 species, ancient, courteous, and bureaucratic beyond human imagining. Among its cultural exchanges was a program the newsfeeds barely covered. Strategic simulation matches. Humanity's best military AIs and staff officers against Concorde counterparts in vast simulated battles framed as a sport. A friendly, esoteric one like fencing. Earth had now played 214 matches and lost every single one. Vera followed the games for her museum's modern wing, and she had begun cataloging the losses the way she had once cataloged her own. That was how she saw what the generals, who treated the games as diplomatic theater, had not. The simulated battlefields were not fictional. She proved it to herself one October night with star charts spread across her kitchen table. Game 197 terrain matched the Kepler 62 system. Game 203 was the approaches to Wolf 359, lovingly detailed. Every battlefield in every game corresponded to real space, real borders, real strategic corridors between Concorde territory and the small human bubble. And there was a second pattern, worse than the first. After every loss within months, something real moved. A human survey mission quietly canceled. A colonial charter withdrawn. A shipping lane rerouted. Each retreat small, each explained domestically as budget or prudence. 214 games, 214 retreats. Vera Stroud sat back from her kitchen table, an old champion looking at a board, and said the thing out loud to nobody. We are not playing a sport, we are losing a war. It took Vera 3 weeks to get 1 hour with someone who mattered, and she spent it in Brussels, across a table from a deputy strategy director who had clearly been assigned to manage her politely. She laid out the charts, the battlefield correspondences, the retreats that followed losses like tide following moon. The director listened with professional patience and then, instead of contradicting her, did something worse. He confirmed it softly off the record and asked her to keep quiet about it. Everyone in the room knows, he said. The games are real. It is the Concorde's way of war, and it is a mercy. The briefing he gave her, in careful abstractions, rearranged her understanding of the past 6 years. The Concorde had not abolished war among its 40 species. It had formalized it. Disputes between members were resolved through arbitrated strategic simulation, both sides bound by treaty to honor the outcome as if the battle had been fought. Fleets were built, crewed, and maintained, and never fired in anger. The simulations were exquisitely accurate. The losing side withdrew from the contested space exactly as if beaten, because next time it might be, and the arbitration was backed by the whole Concorde's combined force. War as a court proceeding. Casualties, 0 for 6,000 years. Humanity, joining the Concorde's periphery, had signed the arbitration compact with full knowledge, and the director defended the signature with weary conviction. The alternative was actual war against 40 species, or exclusion from the civilized galaxy. So Earth played and lost, and ceded its frontier a slice at a time, and the public was allowed to believe the retreats were policy. Losing slowly, he said, was survivable. The games were unwinnable anyway. Concorde strategists had 6 millennia of arbitration experience. Their champion species, the Veth, had not lost a formal match in 900 years. Vera asked the question a game's curator asks by reflex. Who prepares our side? What is their training library? The director looked puzzled. The military AIs train on the full archive of Concorde match records, he said. Optimal play distilled. The best strategic corpus in the galaxy. Vera Stroud, who had spent 40 years watching brilliant engines lose to prepared opponents, felt the whole shape of the disaster settle into place. They are studying the Concorde, she said, and the Concorde is studying us. Tell me, Director, in 6 years, has anyone on our side ever once made them study 4,000 years of human games? The stakes changed in the spring, and they changed because of a species that had never played a friendly match with anyone. The notification arrived through Concord channels with the blandness of true catastrophe. A member species named the Ossuar had filed a territorial claim under full arbitration to the Sol system. Not a border slice. Everything. The claim's legal basis was ancient survey precedents, thin as paper, and its thinness did not matter, because under the compact any member could compel arbitration, and the arbitration was binding. And the penalty for refusing the result was expulsion and the lifting of the Concord's protection, which every analyst agreed meant a real Ossuar fleet in real human skies within a decade. Game 215, stakes, the tenancy of humanity's home system. Date, 14 months out. The Ossuar had retained as their champion advocate the Veth, unbeaten in 900 years. The strategy directorate's own projections leaked within weeks, and they were not projections so much as an obituary. Optimal play by both sides, the models agreed, produced an Ossuar victory in every branch. The frontier games had been unwinnable and survivable. This one was unwinnable and not. Earth's governments did what they always did with impossible problems. They widened the circle of people allowed to fail at it. And so, on a wet morning in May, a car arrived at the Museum of Games bearing the deputy director, no longer managing anyone politely. "You asked me a question," he said. "Nobody in the building could answer it. You have the only library of human play that anyone ever bothered to keep. The directorate is authorized to try anything now, including sentiment." Vera took him through the museum, past the Senate boards and the Go Stones, to the modern wing, and stopped at her favorite case, the one holding a cheap plastic chess set from a park in New York. "Understand what you are asking for," she said. "Optimal play loses this match. Your machines have proven that 214 times, and the Veth have memorized your machines. What you are asking me for is the other thing. The moves no rational engine makes. The Queen's Sacrifice. The bluff into strength. The move that is wrong by every calculation and right because of whose hand plays it. 4,000 years of beautiful, irrational human play." She unlocked the case and picked up the plastic queen. "The Veth have studied our machines," she said. "Let us make them meet our ancestors." The team that assembled in the museum's basement that summer was the strangest general staff ever gathered, and the directorate never stopped being uncomfortable about it. Vera chose them. That was her price for consulting, and desperation paid it. She wanted minds trained in the corpus itself, not in its distillations, and she found them where such minds live. A Go prodigy from Seoul, 22 years old, who had retired from professional play, calling engines boring, and now composed problems for the joy of it. A poker world champion from Lagos, a grandmother who had funded 3 schools by reading the micro-expressions of overconfident men. A bridge pair from Cairo, sisters, national legends. A historian of military deception from Warsaw who knew every feint from Kadesh to Normandy. And one general, seconded as liaison, whom Vera selected personally from a short list of 40 after asking each candidate a single question. "Tell me about a battle you lost." The general she chose was the only one who had answered without blaming anyone. Their preparation inverted every doctrine of the previous 6 years. The military AIs were not discarded, but demoted from players to sparring partners. The team studied the Veth's 900 years of match records not for tactics, but for personality, the way Vera had once studied rivals across a table. And the corpus, the museum's whole vast memory of human play, was mined not for optimal lines, but for signature moments, the moves that had made opponents across 4 millennia push back from the board and stare. The Go prodigy cataloged divine moves, the once-a-century stones played on intuition against all reading. The poker champion built a lexicon of pressure, the grammar of making a stronger hand fold. The historian mapped every feigned retreat that had swallowed a pursuing army. And a pattern emerged from the Veth's 9 centuries, so consistent the team almost distrusted it. The Veth did not merely play optimally. They played to punish deviation. Every opponent's error was answered instantly, efficiently, with maximum extraction. 900 years of punishment had taught every species in the Concord the same lesson. Do not deviate. Play the machine line and lose with dignity. 900 years, Vera said to her team, of nobody daring to play them a queen sacrifice. The Veth had never seen one. It was not in any record they possessed. Deviation in their whole vast experience meant error. It had never once meant invitation. Game 215 convened in the Concord's arbitration hall, a place built to make species feel small, and it succeeded on everyone except a 63-year-old woman who had spent her life in tournament rooms. The hall was an amphitheater wrapped around a projection volume the size of a stadium, where the contested space, the whole sol system rendered star by stone, hung in ghost light. Fleets would move there, translucent and precise, human formations against ossuar formations, arbitrated by Concord adjudicators whose species had administered these proceedings since before Rome. The matches ran in accelerated phases over 11 days. Both sides commanded from sealed galleries. Real admirals, real staff, the full apparatus of war, bloodlessly. The Veth advocate arrived with the confidence of 900 years, and their opening statement, translated with courtly precision, contained a sentence aimed directly at the human gallery. "We have studied your engines to their foundations," it said. "We know your play better than you know it yourselves." In the human gallery, the poker champion smiled at that sentence like a grandmother hearing a bluff, and wrote one word on the shared slate: committed. The early phases unfolded exactly as Earth's machines predicted, because Vera played them that way deliberately. Human fleets took the textbook postures. The Veth responded with their beautiful, punishing efficiency, and the adjudicators running assessment tilted ossuar, day by day, tracking every projection the Directorate had leaked in the spring. In the human command gallery, admirals sweated through the script. Vera watched the Veth, only the Veth, through every exchange, the old habit, watching the player and not the board. She saw what she was waiting for on the 6th day. The Veth had stopped calculating. Their responses were arriving faster, cleaner, drawn from the deep library of 214 dissected human games. They were no longer playing Earth. They were playing their model of Earth and resting on it. That evening, Vera gathered her team in the sealed gallery and stood before the situation display, where humanity's position was eroding on schedule, and gave the order she had built the whole year around, the order that had needed a game's curator because no sane military mind could give it. "Tomorrow," she said, "we lose Mars, on purpose, beautifully." The general closed his eyes. The Go prodigy began, very quietly, to laugh. "Everything they know about us says we defend Mars to the last hull," Vera said. "So tomorrow we play the move that is not in their library. Tomorrow we play like humans, set it up." The sacrifice of Mars entered the record on the 7th day, and it remains the most analyzed single move in the 6,000-year history of Concord arbitration. To the watching adjudicators, it looked at first like collapse. The human fleets defending the Martian approaches, the anchor of Earth's whole inner system position, executed a staged, stumbling withdrawal, the kind of error the Veth had punished 900 years of opponents for showing them. The withdrawal exposed everything: the shipyards, the orbital works, the gravitational corridor to Earth itself. And the stakes bore down on every human watching, in the gallery and on the news feeds that carried the proceedings live to a terrified planet. If this failed, there was no position behind it. The team had bet the species' tenancy of its own birth system on a single conviction about the opponent's mind. The Veth took the bait. Of course they took it. 900 years of doctrine said deviation is error and error is extracted, and their fleets poured into the Martian corridor with textbook hunger, deep, committed, optimal. Except the corridor was a poem, and every human in the gallery knew its verses by heart. The stumbling retreat was Kutuzov leaving Moscow. The exposed shipyards were the poker champion's naked table image, weakness worn as costume. The scattered human squadrons falling back in disorder were the historian's catalog made ghost flesh. The feigned rout, oldest trick in the oldest books, executed with a precision no army in history could have managed, because these fleets were simulations steered by people who had rehearsed the choreography for a year. On the 8th day, the trap closed. The scattered squadrons, every stumble of their retreat secretly a positioning move, coalesced behind the committed Veth mass like a hand closing. The abandoned Martian works lit up as the fortress they had quietly remained. And down the corridor the Veth had entered because optimal play demanded it. Humanity's reserve, held in silence through 7 days of scripted erosion, arrived at the hinge of the envelopment with the accumulated patience of 214 defeats. In the projection volume, translucent and terrible and bloodless, the Ossuar Advocate's fleet died in ghost light, surrounded over 4 hours of arbitrated resolution that the adjudicators, courteous beyond imagining, declined to accelerate. The Veth gallery was silent for all 4 hours. They were reading the whole time, analysts later concluded, through their entire 900-year library looking for the move. It was not there, it had never been there. It was in a museum in Amsterdam in a case with a plastic queen. The adjudicators certified the result on the 11th day, claim denied. Sol's system, confirmed in perpetuity to its native species. Game 215 entered the rolls as humanity's first arbitrated victory, and the hall emptied around a Veth delegation that had not moved for some hours. What happened next was not in any protocol. The Veth Advocate crossed the amphitheater floor against every current of departing dignitaries to the human gallery and requested, through the adjudicators, a formal audience with the human champion. The Directorate scrambled to assemble admirals. The Veth waited courteously until the confusion resolved into the truth, and the truth walked down to meet them. A gray-haired woman in her one good suit, escorted by a Go prodigy trying very hard to be solemn. The exchange that followed was recorded, and humanity has watched it a great deal since. You played a losing move, the Veth Advocate said, deliberately. Our models assign the Mars withdrawal a value below every alternative. It should have ended you. Instead, it ended us. We have run it 4 million times since the 8th day. The move is unsound. It is completely unsound, Vera agreed. Then why does it win? Because you know it is unsound, Vera said. You knew it so deeply that you could not believe we would play it sincerely, so you constructed the only world in which we would. The world where we had collapsed. You did not lose to the move. You lost to the story you told yourself about the move. That is not a flaw in your calculation. It is the price of being a mind. Every mind that models an opponent can be told a story. The Veth Advocate was silent for a long moment. 900 years, it said at last. 900 years, and no one played us a story. No one dared, Vera said gently, because gentleness was all that was left to say it with. You punished everyone who deviated until deviation went extinct. You made the whole Concord play like your models. You have not been undefeated for 900 years, Advocate. You have been alone. And that, the adjudicators recorded, was the moment the unbeaten champion species of the Concord bowed to a museum curator, in the oldest gesture their culture possessed, the acknowledgement between players of a teacher. The consequences arrived over the following year, and they were larger than the victory. The Ossuar claim was dead, and with it, the analysts confirmed 3 other claims that had been drafted in anticipation of an easy precedent. Humanity's frontier stopped eroding. 4 of the 214 lost arbitrations were reopened on procedural grounds by Concord magistrates suddenly interested in the question of whether a compact signatory had understood what it was signing, and 2 of the retreats were reversed outright. Earth's position in the Concord transformed in a single season from tolerated periphery to something no one had a word for yet. But the deep change was not territorial, and Vera had seen it coming in the amphitheater, in the Veth Advocate's long stillness. The Concord's whole species-spanning peace rested on arbitration, and arbitration had quietly ossified. 6,000 years of optimal play, punished into uniformity, had made every match between member species a formality decided in advance by relative computing depth. The games had stopped being contests of minds and become audits of infrastructure. Everyone knew it. No one had said it because the system worked, and because the Veth punished deviation, and because ancient institutions do not reform for abstract reasons. They reform because a 63-year-old woman sets fire to the meta. The petition, when it came, arrived through channels so formal the translators triple-checked it. The Veth, unbeaten for 900 years and beaten now, formally requested of Earth a cultural exchange. Specifically, access to the corpus. The museum, the 4,000 years. They were not alone. Within 2 years, the Museum of Games in Amsterdam, previously visited by schoolchildren and pilgrim chess players, held the strangest reading room in the galaxy, where delegations from 40 species sat with human docents, working through Senate and Satranj, whist and Waiki, poker and diplomacy, and the collected riddles of 4 millennia of human idleness, and asking endlessly the question that had broken the Veth in the amphitheater. Why would anyone play this move? And the docents would answer the only true answer, the one Vera put over the reading room door, and the delegations would sit with it the way novices sit with a koan. Because it was beautiful. The Concord reformed its arbitration compact 5 years after Game 215, and the reform bears human fingerprints on every page. Matches are still binding, still bloodless, still the way 41 species now settle what fleets once settled. But the new protocols, drafted by a commission on which a Go prodigy from Seoul sat as humanity's delegate, quietly dismantled the tyranny of the optimal. Champion advocates rotate. Match libraries are sealed between proceedings, so no one can ever again spend 6 years memorizing an opponent instead of meeting one. And embedded in the preamble, in Concord legal language of the highest register, is a sentence the commission fought over for a year, whose final form is pure Amsterdam. The purpose of the game is to meet the other mind, not to end it. The Veth took the reform hardest and adopted it deepest. Their academies, 900 years of punishment doctrine, now teach deviation theory as a required discipline, taught from human texts, and their young players have begun doing something their elders watch with a bewilderment indistinguishable from hope. They have begun playing badly on purpose to see what happens. 2 of them in a formal match 3 years ago played a double queen sacrifice so flamboyantly unsound that the adjudicators suspended proceedings to applaud, and the recording reached Earth-tagged by some Veth archivist with a developing sense of humor. Greetings to the museum. Earth's military AIs still train, still spar, still stand ready, because the galaxy still holds species outside the Concord and things outside all law, and nobody sane disarms the rational half of the mind. But doctrine changed. Every human strategic academy now pairs its optimization faculty with a chair of what the founding statute, over sustained military objection, insists on calling the unsound arts, and the first holder of every such chair travels, once in their tenure, to Amsterdam, to take the oath of office in the modern wing. The oath is administered by the curator, before a case containing a cheap plastic chess set from a New York park. It is 7 words long. Remember that the map fears the poet. Vera Stroud lived to 81, and she spent the remaining years exactly where she intended, in the museum, arriving at 8, coffee at 10. Unbeatable at speed chess against all visiting dignitaries until the end. She never wrote the memoir. Publishers besieged her. She referred them all with visible pleasure to the exhibits, saying the whole account was already on display for the price of a museum ticket, which was, people eventually understood the truth. The story of Game 215 is told in her museum the way she curated everything. As one case among 4,000 years of cases, not the culmination of human play, just the most recent time it mattered. The case is modest. It holds the shared slate from the command gallery with the poker champion's one word still on it. It holds the star chart from an Amsterdam kitchen table, with a curator's pencil marks joining Game 197 to Kepler 62. It holds her museum pass and her reading glasses and the text of the Veth petition. It does not hold the plastic queen, which remains in its own case 3 meters away, unlabeled, exactly as she left it, because Vera Stroud held firm views about which artifact had actually won. The funeral was attended by delegations from 41 species, and by every living human world champion of anything, and by the Veth advocate, ancient now, who had requested the honor of a place among the family and stood with them, and was seen to bow once, at the end, in the gesture reserved for a teacher. The adjudicators of the Concord, who record everything, entered her passing in the arbitration rolls, an honor extended to no other individual of any species. With a citation, their courtesy kept brief. Vera Stroud of Earth, 215 games, record 1 victory. It is the museum's docents, on the evening tour in the modern wing, with the lights low over 4,000 years of human play, who append what the roles left out. They stop at the plastic queen, and they let the room get quiet, and they say it the way she used to say it to the schoolchildren, the line every visiting species writes down. One victory against the only opponent that was ever real. The certainty that we were already beaten. If this story stayed with you, subscribe. A new one leaves Earth every day.